Hello and welcome to Diaspora Digital Media. My name is Ron Palm Jr. and you're on to DDM Economy, where we look at things happening in dollars and pounds, anything to do with national and international economy. And that's where we're going to do. Today, as my guest is Dr. Nnaemeka Obiaraeri. Doctor, you're welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now, can we know you more? A bit of your background.
Okay, my name is Nnaemeka Obiaraeri. I'm a development economist, an investment banking executive, oil trader, and agripreneur. Over 2 decade experience in investment banking, structured financial advice services. I've participated in actively in the raising of over $3 billion into the sub-Saharan African space over the last 20 years. I am one person that believes so much in integrity, in excellence, and transformation of Nigeria economy and Africa as the bastion of development for humanity. So this is me, married with 3 children. My wife is a medical practitioner. I'm based here in Lagos, Nigeria.
Okay. Yes. For quite some time now, since the introduction or the removal, rather, of subsidy, the economy of Nigeria has like nosedived. Things have been turning haywire, and there seem to be no solution. What's your take on that?
The removal of subsidy and the flotation of the foreign exchange market is not what caused Nigeria economy to dive. I've always said it. A very transparent and free market economy where there is productivity, where there is accountability and transparency, and where there is honest enterprise and productivity. It provides benefit for a vast majority of the people. There have always been this argument between a free market economy and a closed communal economy that does not allow transparency. And if you look at the top 10 economies of the whole world, most of them are driven by the free, transparent economic thinking. If you look at some of the closed economies like South Korea and all the rest of them, you will discover that poverty is rife within those places. So the best, the biggest 10 economies in the whole world practice the same thing that we have done in Nigeria. But the only difference between why it has worked in those climes and why it seems not to be working here is because of the physical, structural, and constitutional deformities that we have here in Nigeria and the corruption that has eaten too deep into the fabrics of our national life. The major reason why Nigeria economy is tanking, the two major demons that are shrinking Nigeria economy and destroying it, are the demons of corruption and the demons of insecurity. The insecurity is one of the grandchildren of corruption in Nigeria. The insecurity is as a consequence of the corruption. Of course, the corruption of Nigeria started even from the constitutional framework. The very constitution upon which this economy is being built, the 1999 constitution, was a fraudulent contraption that was forced upon the Nigerian people by the Abdulsalam Abaka government. If you go back to history, let us take a excursion to history. Look back, the best years of Nigeria was between 1960 to 1966. It was a Nigeria that was governed and built under a constitutional and physical arrangement that was agreed upon by our founding fathers, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Tafawa Balewa, Ahmadu Bello, Obafemi Awolowo, Herbert Macaulay, Enahoro. They all came together after several meetings and summits and conferences and decided to bring the whole ethnic nationality together under a confederal system of government that acknowledges our strengths and our diversities. We had three regions at the onset in 1960: the North, the Old West, and the Old Eastern Nigeria. The regions were very, very powerful. Only very few items were left in the exclusive list for the federal government, and those items were just security and the international affairs. I was even concurrent because the regions also had sub embassies and sub consulates within other nations. We had an economy that was built based on productivity. The physical arrangement was such that the regions controlled and kept 50% of whatever revenue that they generated. 30% is paid into the central port, and then 20% is given to the federal government of Nigeria. There was no incentive for anybody to go to Lagos, then as the capital of Nigeria, to become all powerful emperor and then allow him and himself, the cronies, to become looters and thieves. It was such arrangement that the regions were so independent and autonomous that Ahmadu Bello, who was the leader of MPC, declined to become prime minister when they got majority seat and sent one of his proteges, Tafawa Balewa, to represent him because he loved his beloved North and wanted to help build it. It was a productive based economy where we had healthy competitiveness. They not had their granite pyramid, they had their blue booming cotton industry and textiles. The West had cocoa and all the rest of them, and palm oil. The East, old Eastern Nigeria, had coal, had cocoa, and had palm oil, and even cement. At a time in 1965, Nigeria controlled the 65%, 45% of the global palm oil market, which is today sized at over $72 billion. Indonesia and Malaysia came here 80 years ago to take the seedlings, modify it, and today, between these two countries, they make almost about $65 billion just from the palm oil alone, what Nigeria abandoned. Security was also autonomous because the regions had their own regional police. In fact, it was recorded in the history in 1964-65 that the police of the old Eastern Nigeria was so strong, more efficient than the federal police, that they had to second them to go and make peace in Congo Democratic. So we had a productive based economy. And the perks of office of civil servants were tied to that of the public office. It was part time, where you had men like Sir Louis Fordway, who reputed to be the wealthiest man in Africa, being a member of parliament, chairman of 15 company. He wasn't going to parliament because he wanted to go and collect 160 million naira worth of SUV when he was the one that donated his Rolls Royce to be used to welcome the Queen in the S60s. So we had men who were passionate, who were competent, who were honest, who were creative. At the helm of affairs within our political circle, Michael Okpara, at the age of 39, to 46, built over 214-kilometer industrial belt in the old Eastern Nigeria and built an economy that was the fastest growing for 5 consecutive years under the Commonwealth. So basically, why we are where we are today in Nigeria is because of the constitutional deformities, because of the social deformities, because of physical recklessness, and because of the corruption and insecurity that have been put together over the last 8 years, that wasn't over the last 8 years. So removal of subsidy and bringing transparency in the FX market. If the physical side had done what they are supposed to do, ramp up oil production to 2.5 million barrels, where it was in 2011, 2.3 million barrels a day, where it was when Jonathan handed over to Buhari, put up structures, devolve security back to the regions, the local government, and the states in a way that each indigenous people protect their community. If Benue State had a state police that are fully equipped and armed to match the bandits, the food basket of Benue State will be safe. If Plateau State has the power and the resources to set up Plateau police that have RPGs, AK-47, and even helicopter gunboats, the militia that came from Mali, from Senegal, according to Karao Baraje, when he told us what they did in 2015, will not have the audacity to chase away the indigenous people who are the people producing food in Nigeria, put them in IDP camp while they are creating hell and mayhem within the system. So basically, we are where we are because the foundation is faulty. If we can fix the physical, constitutional, structural, governance, and political framework of Nigeria back to 1960 to 1966, allow the regions under the general arrangement to be autonomous. Some of the reasons and some of the things that these guys hold on to, religion and the ethnicity, to deceive the ignorant masses, will be greatly reduced because people will not look inward. When the states and the regions control 50% of what they produce, and there is little attraction to go to Abuja to go and steal and loot, people will look inward. Where I'm from the southeast of Nigeria, we'll begin to ask questions to those who purport to have governors. Now you can't be asking me to go and look at Ashwaju in Abuja. If we control our resources and the people that are providing security are within my region, nobody can come and play ethnic and religious politics, but all of us are homogeneously Igbos and the same religion. So efficiency, and then if we have a rotational presidency arrangement where rotation like Abacha made is rotated among the regions, all the schemacies and all the, if it simply means if it is the turn of the southeast to produce the presidency, nobody will play on ethnic or religious sentiment to get the worst of us to be to rule the best of us. So the other five regions now, and the parties are going to be select the presidency when it is the turn of the southeast, will look for the best, because if they pick the bad one, it will affect everybody. So these are the foundational problem that we are suffering. It's not the regulation nor removal of subsidy. In other climes like America, in Canada, in Singapore, in Malaysia, in some other places, even in next door neighbor here, Chad, Niger
Yes.
Republic, as poor as they are, their petroleum product is fully deregulated. We are the only country in the whole of West Africa that have been subsidizing criminality over the last 23 years.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for that. Now, let's look at the Nigerian setup. Among some of the steps being taken by the federal government is to have a salary increase for civil servants. To what extent, from your analysis or from your experience, is that going to help in terms of the hardship people are facing within the economy?
Let me tell you, I blame the civil servants and I hold them responsible as part of the problems that we're having in Nigeria. The political class cannot loot and steal without the active connivance of the civil servants, the security agencies not looking away, and then the banking system. And I will address this. Even if you increase the salary of the civil servants to 100,000 naira as they are clamoring, the federal government is proposing 35,000 naira, which is actually $23 based on the current exchange rate in the parallel market. Even if you give them 100,000 naira minimum wage, 100,000 naira in today's Nigeria based on the prevailing exchange rate is falls still under the poverty threshold as enunciated by the World Bank and the United Nations. The poverty income level is any income level below $2.15 a day, which is about
Mhm.
$66 a month. At the current exchange rate, today is 30th of January 2024. The exchange rate today closed at 1,515 naira. If you are to divide 100,000, which is even NLS is proposing, you will discover that based on the current exchange, which is almost galloping 2,000, that even minimum wage throws the minimum civil servants into the poverty threshold, where he becomes a dependent that will have to depend on charity and the welfare to be able to survive. That is not the kind of economy we want to build. I expected the civil servants, being the backbone of the public sector, NLC and TUC, if they are very sincere, if we live in a country where people are honest, people are sincere, people know what the right thing to do, what the NLC and the TUC should be doing now is to organize mass protests across Nigeria to compel the elected officials, especially the National Assembly members, to wholesomely overhaul the constitutional framework of Nigeria back to 1960 to 1966. Just pick up the 1963 constitution, dust it, modify the geographical delineation from 4 regions to 6 regions, and put in place the whole physical arrangement that was there and pass it as law and get 24th assemblies to pass it. Where you will tie the pegs of office of public office holders to that of the civil service. Have you bothered to ask yourself this question? The National Assembly, it did not take any committee for them to approve 70 billion naira for themselves as location allowance. They did not appoint committees to approve 40 billion naira for themselves to buy SUVs at the cost of 160 million naira per SUV. They did not set up any committee to ramp up their allocation, their provisions in the budget from 120 billion to 560 billion. They were in a hurry and the president gave assent to it. But to increase civil servants' salaries to 100,000, which is not even below poverty threshold, They are setting up committees of 6 governors. That is to show you how insensitive and wicked these political elites are. And I don't blame them. I blame Nigerians. I blame the civil servants. I blame the public service. Because in a country where people are thinking, the civil servants should be at the forefront of demanding for total overhaul of the physical framework of Nigeria in such a way that those of them who are in Abuja as political office holders will align their pecs, their allowances, their remunerations to that of the civil service. Does it make sense to you that a professor of medicine, a professor of law, that dedicated 30 years of his life building human capital in Nigeria is striking like an almajiri? Somebody that have gone to House of Rep to serve for 4 years is speaking SUV worth 160 million naira in a country that does not have proper road network that is working. So you see, the problem here is that the civil servants have to sit up. If we have in a majority right thinking, honest, sincere, and patriotic Nigerians, what the civil servants should be doing, rather than asking for 100,000 that will still throw them into poverty within the next few days, is for them to demand and stand by it, shut down the whole system until urgently. If the political class are always united when they want to share and loot, so let them adopt the same unity to amend the whole constitutional and physical framework of Nigeria in such a way that will make political offices so unattractive to men and women who do not have any second address. Politics is not supposed to be a place where people will go to show up their sagging economic life. Politics is a call to serve. Political office actually supposed to be made
Yeah.
available for people who have accomplished stellar accomplishment in the private sector to come and throw in their experiences, their knowledge, their vast policy acumen to help build up critical economy that adds value to everybody. Today, they've
Wow.
reduced political office in Nigeria as avenue for, sorry to use this word, urchins, men that have failed in their private life to come and they perch on national resources of Nigeria, devour and loot it while creating more poor people within the masses.
So technically looking, what is the percentage of Nigerians that are poor now, and
Okay, based on NDIC records, NDIC is Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation. As
okay.
at 2001, based on their own record, out of the 138, 140 million accounts in Nigeria, over 28 have no BVN. Then out of the 117 accounts that have BVN and that are fully insured by NDIC, only about 0.6% had about 500,000 naira deposit inside those accounts. That is less than 800,000 Nigerians out of a population of about 200 million have up to 500,000 naira deposit in their accounts. And if you subject that number to more forensic investigation, you will discover that among those 800,000 people, you may actually end up getting only 500,000 people. Maybe people that have multiple accounts, 500,000 here, 1 million naira, and all those stuff. Based on MPS own records, as at 2021, we had over 130, we have over 133 million multidimensional poor Nigerians. And
Hmm.
over 92% of Nigerians who earns the income of 80,000 naira and below. Like I mentioned to you, scientifically, according to the World Bank parameters,
Hmm.
poverty threshold is measured from income level of $2.15 and below. $2.15 today, based on the current exchange rate as it closed today in the market, is about 3,554 naira a day income, or 1,650 naira, 100,654 naira per month. So even at the current threshold, any Nigerian that does not earn up to 100,000 naira a month as take home revenue, net of taxes and other liabilities, is technically poor by World Bank standards. So looking at it technically, I'm sorry to say it, over 190 million Nigerians are actually within the poverty threshold. And the end is not in sight, because from the way the naira is galloping, it may hit 2,000 naira to $1 in the next couple of weeks. It's not a case of prophecy. It's a case of clearly what is happening. I will take you back. In 1965, when Nigeria was such a very buoyant economy that our currency was more powerful than the dollar and the British pound sterling, Singapore was at that time kicked out of union with mainland Malaysia. Singapore is a strip of 759, an island, a strip of island, very tiny dot in the ocean, 759 square kilometers, as smaller than Alimosho in Lagos State. 5.6 million people. They were kicked out of union because the mainland Malaysians felt that the Singaporeans had no value to add them, because even Singapore buys sand to fill up the waters to be able to build houses. But leadership provided the direction for them to bring themselves out from third world country to first world country. As at 1965, literacy level in Singapore was about 52, 53%. Singapore was a poor nation by every standard. Nigeria was ahead of them. As at that time, if you look back, the Singaporean currency, the Singaporean dollar, was exchanging for almost $2.30. Well, $2 thousands of ago, for one US dollar. As at 1990, $1 62 Singaporean dollar was exchanging for one US dollar. But do you know one thing? Today, 2024, a US dollar is exchanging for 1.34 Singaporean dollars. Over the last 30 years, 1990, 34 years, 1924, Singapore currency had gained 18% over the US dollar. Stable currency. Go and check our contemporaries. Nigeria is the only place where our currency continues to devalue against the dollar and pound sterling over time, because of our structural deformities, because of our foundational problem. My brother, technically and as a matter of fact, over 92% of Nigerians are within the poverty threshold. And if we do not do a U-turn and urgently address the foundational problem, which is very, very key, even the good books, the scripture says, if the foundation is faulty, there is nothing that the righteous can do. Even if you, I'm sorry, even if you bring the best economists from around the world to come and govern Nigeria, under the current physical, constitutional, resource production and control framework, under the prevailing massive division in Nigeria, under the prevailing insecurity, where people walk around with AK-47, with RPGs, where non-state actors like Mieti Allah can threaten a state governor and nothing is done, and even threaten federal government and nothing is done, where people will go on TV with AK-47 and be talking rubbish and nothing is done to them. If we do not fix the structural deformities, Nigeria today, go and mark it somewhere. Nnaemeka Obiaraeri have said it. By December 2024, if Nigeria between now and March do not totally restructure and overhaul the constitutional, physical, resource production and distribution framework, security architecture, socio-economic framework back to what we had in 1963, mark it anywhere, quote me anywhere, by December 2024, 98% of Nigerians enter into poverty.
Wow, that is quite strong. Matthew Okoye,
Thank you, Doc. I've always been a big fan of yours. I always listen to you when you appear on the Arise Elsewhere. Always like and, how you speak truth to power. So I'm quite sort of obliged to have you speak to us today. Thank you very much for coming. Well, from I've said, there's quite a lot of problem that is facing Nigeria economically. A lot of problem facing the country economically, even in the terms of whatever you look at it. I read a little bit of your article where you profile the solution of constitutional amendment, where you delineate powers to state government, to the sub-region. Now, I don't think all of this can be done at one time, at a time. It cannot be done, by fiat. In order of priority, how do this government start solving this problem in order of priority? Should they delineate power first to the sub-region, or do they solve the physical problem, or do they solve the military problem, or do they, solve the security problem? Because it seems like the problem is multidimensional, and you can't just solve all of them at one time. How did they go about this? Because it's very confusing. Thank you.
Well, I think basically what Mazi Okoye just said was these things you have enumerated from your recent write-up uh, to be implemented at one go. Which would you recommend in order of priority so that those in power, those policymakers, will be able to take it? Which is the best recommendation? Which is the best way to go in order of priority?
Okay, the best way to go, first of all, restructuring will take time. It may take about 3 to 6 months to implement it. For now, what do we do to address the two main issues here, corruption and insecurity? Of course, we can't shut down the economy while we tackle corruption and insecurity. We need to look at, first of all, how do we even arrest these dwindling fortunes of the naira? From May 2023 till now, the naira has depreciated from 765 naira to $1 to 1,515 naira to $1, and there is no evidence of any liquidity in terms of dollar supply in the market to stop the downward spiral. There are three factors driving this. One is corruption, two, speculation, and three, genuine demand for the dollar. Let me start from the genuine demand for the dollar. Before the devaluation of the naira by the central bank governor, it was recorded and on record that we had an outstanding letter of credit obligation within the banking system of about $8 billion, thereabout. $8 billion legitimate, honest, entrepreneurial transactions, raw materials purchased, goods manufactured, sold, revenues, and taxes paid at 430 naira to $1. That was the exchange rate net, and our market was devalued. In a country where the political leaders are very compassionate, where they are very creative in general thinking, what they would have done was, first of all, to provide level playing ground for every active player in the market that are engaged in productive activity. What you would have done was to provide dollar inflow to liquidate the outstanding obligations that were consummated, because allowing the people that are carrying it in their books to source for dollar today at the current rate is wiping them out and taking them out. Thousands of companies will close, millions of jobs will be lost, because the MSME still provide about 60% of employment within the system. How do we show up the supply side of the dollar in such a way? In 2022, we incurred over $52 billion worth of import expenses. It's a simple law of demand and supply. When we have so much dollar inflow into the country, more than demand, Naira will gain. That is what we have seen in UAE over the last 50 years and Singapore over the last 30 years. They have more dollar receivables, more than what they are spending. Even Singapore even imports sand. Basically, so what do we do? If our import volume annually, legit import volume, not the criminal ones that are taken to the back door by politicians to go and buy house in Maryland and other places. Our target should be, how do we grow the supply side of the dollar to bring in at least 4 times what we spend? Crude oil is our main source. Before Buhari took over in 2023, we are doing average of 2.3 million barrels in crude and condensate. He came in out of his heady nature, decided to cancel the amnesty program. The Delta guys went to do the cruise. By the time they left from February 26, 2006, for when Oshibajo went to make peace with them, we have lost our output to about 1.2 million barrels a day. Under Buhari, on a consistent basis, Nigeria was losing average of 1 million barrels of crude oil every day for 5 years, either by way of inefficiency or theft. A sector that was supposed to have given us at least 70 to 90 billion dollars annually is today not even easy enough. So I expected the government of the day immediately took over to put in place structures, policies, arrangements. A country that did 2.5 million barrels of crude oil per day and condensate in 2011 can replicate it. It's not something we have not done before. We have reserve of 37 billion barrels reserve, which we had target of ramping it up to 40 billion barrels. If we are a country that have leaders that are very creative thinking, what we should have been thinking about is we have oil wells that are already that are capped. The IOCs are not providing new investment in the industry. How do we open up the new wells, old wells? How do we do new wells to ramp up output? Even OPEC, even if OPEC is giving us OPEC quota of 1.78 million barrels a day, the excess production that we will have above can be refined locally. Encourage companies. Let me tell you, one of the ways before you give anybody access to drill any oil well or to open old well or to do new well, get the person get you a bank guarantee from a reputable first class bank that whatever crude is going to get should be used, should be refined in Nigeria. So you attach modular refineries to those fields in such a way that Nigeria will become the refinery hub for the West African population of about 100 million people. This is no skyrocket science. When we've done that in the short term, the next thing is NNPC whole asset is worth over $62 billion. Why are we going to borrow $3 billion, pledging $12 billion worth of crude oil? Does it make sense at 12%? When we will have simply and under an arrangement to divest the asset holdings of the federal government of Nigeria by 55%. Just like we have in LLNG. LLNG is owned 51% by private investors and 49% by the federal government. That is why you don't see the NLNG MD or board being invited to the Harad by National Assembly members, because it's a private-public partnership joint venture arrangement that is shielded and insulated from the political, what I call political harness of the political class. So if you do such arrangement, federal government sell down. British Petroleum used to be a public entity. Today it's private sector driven. Petronas, Petrobras, go and look at their structure. Federal government divest 60% shareholding from NNPC, 55% shareholding. That will automatically inject new $34 billion into the economy of Nigeria. Even if it is going to take time to divest, you can get less of JP Morgan Chase or Barclay to be the arrangers. When they do their due diligence and see that the asset that has to divest is over $32 billion, they can, in the interim, pre-lend us $15 billion against receivables that will come from that diversion, which they are midwifing. In such a way, we will have excess liquidity. When we have excess liquidity of the dollar within the system, even if there are criminal demand for a dollar, the impact will not be as it is today. And then fixed insecurity. This is one country that can easily ramp up agri output of not less than $100 to $200 billion annually. This is one country that has sufficient land mass, 64 million arable land mass, 210 million working population, the best demography God has given to mankind, right sunshine, right rainfall. But the problem is that we do not have policies in place to protect the farmers. It has been shown clearly over the last 23 years that the current security architecture in Nigeria cannot fix insecurity. What we are dealing with now is beyond the normal criminality. So how do you do it? We have advocated. In the meantime, state of emergency. The police is overwhelmed. The army is overwhelmed. The land mass is so huge. The only people that can protect themselves and have incentive to protect are the indigenous people. If you come to Plateau State, there's a Plateau people, Benue people in every community working with the army and police, raise local vigilante, not local vigilante will check up them. The ones that are fully armed. Let me tell you, lawful terror, the task on lawful terror. They will work with the police, just like we have the civilian JTF in every community. Let them have their own, select people within the same locality to protect their community. Peter Obi is Anambra State. Anambra was a beehive of activity. when PTOB decided to add this 177 autonomous communities to donate their sons, 30 sons per community. He provided them with trucks, trained them, gave them arms, and every community was gated. And they had walkie-talkies and drones. The communities had communication among them. So if you attack community A, the whole other adjoining communities will lock up their gates. There will be no escape for you until they fish you out. For 5 consecutive years, Anambra State was voted by the IGP then as the most secure state in Nigeria. And that was at a low scale. If the federal government of Nigeria is very sincere to fight insecurity, under Buhari, we wasted over $27 billion as security expenses. With insecurity festering around the country. There was no sincerity. It became another bazaar for stealing and looting of our commonwealth. Dasuki, we talked about $2.1 billion security fund that was misappropriated. If we want to fix insecurity, the only way to do it is to devolve security back to the communities, back to local government, support them, empower them, equip them to flush out the criminals within their system and stop those coming from outside Nigeria to come and torment Nigerians from having a foothold in this country. If there is sincerity of purpose, if there is honesty, if there is passionate creativity and patriotism among the political elites, there should be a consensus at the agreements of the mind to devolve security and the physical architecture of Nigeria back to the time when things worked well. In 1964-65, you can enter 911 truck in Chopper and drive all night to Kano without anybody molesting you, no kidnapper, no bandit, no nothing. Today, you can't even try it. So these are the urgent ones, but on the long run, please, I want to use this medium, as I've always used in other medium, to beg President Tinubu and the 36 governors and members of the National Assembly and the assemblies. You are free to do whatever you want to do with the FAC and Jack and the whatever. But please, fish out the 1963 Constitution. We have 6 regions already delineated. Apply the 6 regions delineations in that Constitution. Adopt the whole physical governance resource control framework there. Pass it in one day. Read through them in one day as the new constitution. Let Nigeria be renewed. I tell you, when there is less attractiveness of political office, when people see there is no money to steal in Abuja, everybody will look inward to develop their regions and states and local government areas.
Well, Doc, let me put you on a corner. It's like the current economic architecture that we have. The setup is not being very fruitful. Like the current economic structure we have for Nigeria, like you have explained, is not being true. How would you feel if President Bola Tinubu, appoints you to head the economic team?
I told you something here. If the foundation is faulty, there is nothing that the righteous can do to fix the situation unless the foundation is fixed. The only appointment I will accept is to chair whatever private sector committee that will help them clean up the 1993 Constitution and they draft it into a bill for them to pass it as a new constitution. That's the only constitution, that's the only appointment I as a person will accept. The only appointment on record I will accept is the appointment that will make me the headship of that committee that will work with National Assembly to restructure Nigeria back to the 1966 constitutional framework within the next 3 to 6 months.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Nnaemeka. It's been a pleasure having you on our program. And before we wrap up,
thank you so much.
All right, you have been listening to Dr. Nnaemeka Obiaraeri, who has just given us an insight on how the economy of Nigeria has been and the way forward. So why don't you tune in next week, same time, as we bring you another edition of the program, The Economy. Mazio Kwe, thank you for being around. Unfortunately, the doctor couldn't hear you, but thanks for being around and for your contributions. Thank you on behalf of the entire team. This is Ron Palm Jr. saying, Nigeria is the only country we have. We can't all japa. We need to face reality and do what we need to do to fix it. Have a pleasant time, and thanks for watching DDM Economy. Thank you.